Alright, welcome to episode 34 of History Rewritten. History Rewritten? That's the name of my channel, not this. What if civilization started over? In the last episode then, we had a big war down here in Hijaz. That was the main thing, and some of the colonization, but who cares? Not even got that far yet. Gonna talk about that more in today's episode, and like a cool historical throwback thing. Anyway, as you can see, Hijaz does not exist anymore. I hope that wasn't a surprise to anyone, because, yeah, they're definitely not going to keep this country around. It was very much against all the ideas of all of these countries, so yeah, it's not going to exist anymore. We have 4 new countries, most of which are random colours, these being those 3. Egypt, no, this one's more important though. Egypt expanded all the way up to the Mediterranean, the Libyan country got a bit of land, you got your territory back, and the Indian country is now a pretty strong regional power with like a sphere of influence that's probably a bit like this, maybe? So, they're kind of strong, and maybe they even include this. I'm not really sure. But go Indigo. I might actually do spheres of influence, maybe not in today's episode, but like, for example, the red team probably has something a bit like this. Is there a sphere maybe including this bit as well? You can't really see that. But you get the idea. Anyway, the red team got some land, and they have all these other countries. The main thing about this blue country is that they were part of my version of the Crusades. So we had the Crusades happen, technically. We had those northern European countries. I don't think I explained this in the video, which is kind of stupid. They invaded Hijaz to try and stop this sort of ultra-religious nationalism that's over here in these Druidic countries. To stop the spread of that, because they'd be like, oh no, everyone's formed a coalition against them. Maybe we should calm down our Druidic stuff. And therefore, the Holy Polish Empire wouldn't have to fight the Druids, which is what they want. They don't want to do. They don't want to fight the Eastern Europeans, because in their mind, everyone's united under the old Polish country that used to exist, you know? That was like in this area, and they're all under that country. So, they shouldn't be fighting, because they're all the same sort of ethnicity, kind of. Well, they're all Caucasian, technically. So, they didn't go and fight the Eastern Europeans, they went and fought Hijaz instead. And they created this country. So this country is a new religious guy. Basically, the main thing about them is that their capital city will be under a new religion. I guess you've got the religion map here now. Where's their capital? It's right here. So, this country is kind of, not really a protectorate, but you don't really want to mess with this country because all these other Holy Polish Empire people do really like this country. They're like, it's my guy. So, they all kind of like this country, and they're a bit special now. It's kind of like when, in the Crusades, they made that country in Jerusalem that was Christian, even though there were loads of Muslim countries around it. That's kind of what this is, but it's really hard to defend, so oh well. Anyway, let's get on with the video, and first off, let's go to our predictable event, the Danish going for another war. So Denmark has a few targets in the British Isles and also at home in Europe. They could attack up here, that's probably not a good idea. They could attack either of these two countries. They're both kind of like mid-regional powers. At this point, the Dutch are probably becoming kind of strong, like they were in real life. But I mean, in real life at this point, they were trading and stuff. They're not trading right now. What the hell? Really not trading right now? What's going on? I don't know. I have weird Irishy sounding blips sometimes, which is strange. Anyway, so they're probably okay in sort of strength. And this country's in the Rhineland, so meh. They may be good targets. We also have both these English countries and this kind of big Irish country. Like I guess it's Wessex, but yeah, kind of predictably, they're just going to go for the easy target, which is this English country. Why? Because their capital is right over here. This is just going to be a pretty easy war. They take the capital city very quickly, moving across the coast. They capture this city in East Anglia and just take over the entire coastal area of this country. The other two, that's not very nice. The other two English countries realize that they need to make buffers between them and the Danes, and the blue English country and the Wessex country will invade. So they don't fully occupy all this stuff. The Danes probably get some of that, but it doesn't really matter. And in the end, they can sit down for a peace treaty. Denmark is by far the stronger country here. I'll look at power rankings in a second. So the Wessex country gets this one province. Hooray! And the blue English country will be allowed to take these two. They've cooperated with the Danes before in the past, so that's nice. And there you go. As for the rest of this country, it gets to stay independent. Nah, I'm only joking. Um, it's fully annexed into the Danish Empire, and they now have this really cool looking North Sea Empire. Major cities, I mean, the English got one, I think, and then Danes got, well, they got three, including the capital of that Yorkshire sort of country. So there you go. There's no cities in this entire part of Scotland. That's kind of sad. That's the end of that piece, Treaty. I said I would look at power rankings, so let's go and do that. So how many cities does Wessex have? They've got one in both those French bits and four over here. Oh, cool. Power ranking. Oh yeah, it's this one. I said I'd also do trade routes today. Maybe. Central Asia is still the strongest. Mesopotamia, which, I mean, if you had to have a good look at it, that's a lot of land, very rich land at this point in the series. So Mesopotamia is second, followed by the Bulgarians. There's a bit of a gap, but the Bulgarians are kind of getting stronger, I guess. They're pretty big. Korea is fourth. That makes sense. They've got a lot of valuable land. The Spanish are fifth. They're growing their economy a lot with their colonization. The Danes are sixth. Their colonies are less valuable than Spain's by a long way. Bengal is in seventh. They are starting their own colonization thing. And they've got lots of land in Southeast Asia. Turkey is in 8th, which they just got onto the top 10 again. They were there at like the start of the series, but they're back now. They've profited a lot from all their powerful neighbours, and they're doing quite well. The Greeks are in 9th, and the Karnataka country, which is this red one, it's just a funny word to say, is now in 10th. Cool. Anyway, I want to do another war maybe. I'm not sure. I might just do some colonization. But let's start in a different area of the world when we do our colonization, which is East Asia, because the Koreans are finally going to start colonizing. So they head up from the Kuril Islands over here, and what they do is they just make a landing around here in the Kamchatka Peninsula of Russia. We'll see if we can actually make this look reasonably good. I like this peninsula though, it looks pretty fun. So the Koreans will take over all of this territory, adding it into their empire, which is pretty massive at this point. And after that, they make landings in these Aleutian Islands towards Alaska, taking over all those islands. I mean, there's also some over here. They're like islands, apparently. Now, the Spanish and the Danes, it's going to take them a while to hear about the Koreans being over here. So the Koreans take over all of this stuff. They don't actually make landings on like the main Alaskan islands, but they get around here. So yeah, they try. They'll probably get their next episode. But yeah, it's going to take a while for these Western Europeans to hear about Koreans being in North America. They also don't even know that this stuff is connected. It's a long way between the other ends of Canada / Alaska. So yeah, we'll see how long it takes for that. But this really threatens Korea's opponent, which is the Orange Country. So the Orange Country will do their own exploration. They have heard, of course, about Bengali movements down here in Southeast Asia, and they want to do something similar, so they will head down exploring in Southeast Asia and pretty quickly encounter the Philippine Islands, and they make their own new colony right over here in the Philippines. So there you go, the Orange team has started their own colonization. It's not a massive colony, but could possibly help them out in the future. Might make it onto the top 10 one day. Heading over to Bengal then, they're pretty strong. They're 7th. I think their peak was 6th, but you know, they're kind of making their way up there. So they take over all of this northern Sumatran stuff. I didn't forget the name of the island, I wasn't really showing this border. I don't know how much I like that. I might change it a little bit. They also take over some of the islands on the coast. However, we see a new country arrive in Sumatra, just the general Southeast Asian area, and that is of course the Red South Indian country. I might just call them South India. They make a landing. Why do I keep doing that noise? I don't know. Make a landing over here on the southern end of Sumatra, and yeah, it's border gore time, guys. They take over this stuff. They also make some landings on these islands, probably before they do this. They also land in this island, but yeah, they've got their own new colony over here. But they also will expand their Tanzanian colony over to the border of the actual Tanzanian country, or Kenyan, I guess, maybe. They also expand inland a bit, and also just further south, going towards Mozambique, kind of. They're still in Tanzania, I think, though. To take over all this land, and also this bit. The discovery of Madagascar has been made. People have probably gone around Africa now, and there's probably a pretty common trade route, which might make this blue country richer, but also they're really isolated, so maybe not. We can also do just, I don't know, colonization always takes a while in this. I tried to keep it shorter, but it always takes a bit of time. So, let's go over to the Danes. They've already gone to a war today, which they do in most episodes, so it doesn't really mean anything. They make a new colony up here in northern Canada because, of course, why not? They're just setting up loads of small, well, not small, but little colonies all over this sort of Labrador, Quebec, Newfoundland area. So that's cool. They set up a new one over here, connecting it up to this, what I assume is like a bay or a river thing. Mouth, whatever, tributary, I don't know. Pretty cool Danish stuff. And the main bit of the colonization, other than what happened in East Asia, is we see a meeting happen. Well, where's the city in this place? Let's go for this Haitian city. That is this timeline's version of the Treaty of Tordesillas. It's just for North America. Well, the Americas, I mean, sorry. Between the Spanish and the Pyrenees countries, they're both quite rivals, really. But what happens is that they agree to split the continent into two. And it kind of looks basically just like a straight line. Well, not quite, because, well, probably. It's about like this. So all of this stuff is allowed to be colonized by the Pyrenees country, and the Spanish are the only ones who are allowed to colonize all of this stuff, and they agree that's how it will work. I mean, they don't know how big either of these bits of land are. Is slash what? Me. But yeah, they're willing to accept that. Seems like a good treaty for them, and there should be less rivalry because they don't really want to go to war. They just want to make money, which is fair, I think. These Spanish, you know, they're happy they don't have to worry about the Pyrenees country just randomly coming over here. They will colonize around this bay that I should I should probably know the name of, and also all the way down here through Colombia. The Panama Canal, they discovered that recently. Probably a good idea to make a colony around here. So they do that. That's a lot of colonization for them today, but it's not just that, because they're going to be going around here, down the coast of Brazil into Guyana sort of territory. What? Coast of Venezuela into Guyana, I think. So there you go, they take over all of this stuff. Boom, boom, boom. Are they going to go into the rainforest areas? Well, maybe. They'll take over this bit, but the rainforest is kind of not as valuable. As for the Pyrenees country, their expansionist capabilities are a lot less. Well, they just don't have as much ability or money as the Spanish country, so then they take over this Floridan stuff, along with expanding this colony over here in the Yucatan Peninsula. Not like that, though. We can't have those borders. So there you go, there's that. Let's go to another war, shall we? Why in Mesopotamia? What's going on in Mesopotamia, guys? Well, Mesopotamia is kind of in a bad spot right now, because people are rebelling away from them. I mean, they're not trying to, well, they are kind of trying to break away. The religion layer is apparently very important in this area. We can see that the Hijaz religion still exists here, and although these guys might do some questionable things to get rid of the Hijaz religion, no one's going to care about that, so you're free to do that. It's still existing in this area, and the people there want to recreate the Hijaz state, or at least get more autonomy within the Mesopotamian Empire. However, Mesopotamia's like, nah, that's a bad idea. That doesn't sound like fun. We also see Persians over in the eastern areas, along with Caucasians, and even Turkish people, and some of these like eastern province guys, and they all want to reunify with their other countries, and it's causing a huge load of problems in the Red Team. They're a big place in trade routes, but trade routes are now down because of the dangers and stuff, so it's really caused a massive economic crash in the Mesopotamian country, and they need to satisfy these people somehow. They've managed to stamp down on the problems a little bit, however, they're still not entirely going away, and this is a perfect opportunity for a certain country who borders them to go to war with them, and that country is unfortunately the Turkish country. They recently moved up to 7th, and with money and weapons, probably muskets and stuff, which got invented last time from the Persian country, and also stuff from the Bulgarians as well. They will invade the Mesopotamian country. Trade with the Mesopotamians is down for a long time for all their neighbors. They haven't got as much new technology. I mean, it's not that outdated like the current tech, but you know, every little helps. So Turkey, in a very big surprise invasion, just invades into this Turkish area, lots of which is actually very pro rejoining Turkey. or like the Roman country that used to exist in this bit. Over here it's more pro-Caucasian, but there's more nationalism for the ethnicities within the Red Team Empire. Cyprus is a bit different. The Red Team at one point it was owned by the Romans, but for most of its history it's been owned by the Mesopotamians. So Cyprus is still pretty loyal, but there's still some Turkish immigrants here, and they kind of want to join. So there's a big battle that happens in Cyprus, but in the end the Red Team will abandon it, sending the troops back to the mainland to try and defend here. However, it's just not going that well. The Turkish have sent their entire military, and they have a big population, if you can tell by the amount of cities. Most of it's kind of like around here, that's a circle of most of their country. But I guess like this area, not very many people over here, but they're also receiving volunteer troops from their allies, kind of, in Hungary and Ukraine. They're not official allies, but they work very closely together, and these countries are sending help to the Turkish, and when those volunteer troops arrive, they do a lot of damage to the Red Team, because they've got different tactics to the Red Team tactics. So they work down the coast over here in Syria, taking over this territory. They also move in, take these few major cities in the north, where the Caucasians, realizing that their own country isn't going to help them to invade, and there's definitely a lot of Caucasian ethnic groups up in this area, will decide to help out against the Mesopotamians in favor of joining the Turkish state. So, maybe they can get more freedoms and liberties, because the Turkish do offer them that within joining their country. Persia is still a bit reluctant to join this war. They don't really want to do that. However, the Red Team's realizing at this point that if they don't end this soon, they could get a huge coalition formed against them, because there's a lot of countries who would like their land. Like possibly Caucasia, but they're just kind of scared. Persia maybe. This blue country, even Egypt potentially, even though they're kind of in the Mesopotamian sphere of influence. And even these two Mesopotamian countries, we could see the reappearance of Hejaz, and everyone will be very annoyed at the Red Team if they let Hejaz come back. So they send in their military a bit, but they don't really do that much work. The military they're realizing they have to fight against their own people in this, so they don't really push the major cities. They push to take land and kind of make their generals happy, because they're capturing land, but they don't invade towards many of the urban areas, and in general the war against the Turkish is very unpopular here. The Turks manage to do some really good counter-offensives, and although they do lose one major city, the front lines quickly restabilize and become very similar to what they were before, and eventually the Red Team and the Turkish will agree to sit down for a peace treaty. First off, Turkey will be taking over Cyprus, gives you a sort of basis for what they're going to do in the rest of this. However, their main ambitions were in like Syria and the northern Mesopotamian region, so we see the Turkish annex a load of land. Well, quite a lot really. What am I saying? I don't know. They take sort of like a greater Syria, maybe Assyria. Is this what Assyria looked like? I don't know. I'm not an Assyria expert. And it looks something like this. Hopefully this looks okay. Maybe. So yeah, it looks something like that. I might make them go further down the coast, I think, just because that's the kind of image I have in my mind, what I want the Turkish to look like. But this is really going to block off a lot of the Red Team's major, export naval stuff. They lose all of these provinces to the Turkish Empire, and the Red Team is very, very sad. I don't like the border in the south. I'm sorry, this is why I do the major peace treaties off camera, because I was really bad at doing these. I'm like, nah, this looks horrible and I hate it. So we're going to change it, and there's just loads of changes and stuff to get the borders how I like them. Oh no, what is that? What is that? I can't be having straight lines in this day and age. Okay, does that make it look better? I think so. Alright, cool. They actually do have a major city, and here are the new borders of Mesopotamia. But you can also make something else official now, which is the Turkish alliance with the Hungarians and the Ukrainians. So is this... No, the trade routes. I said I was going to do that, and then I didn't. So we've got Square Alliance in the HPE, the, whatever shape that is, I don't know, rhombus? I don't know what that is. Circle. Oh, it's trapezium. There we go. Circle over here, that's not a circle. What else do we have? What other shapes can we use? That's a diamond. Let's make a diamond alliance, sure. Which layer is that? Is this layer. Cool, it's the Turkish. the Ukrainians, and the Hungarians all form one big alliance together. But what the frick? Hey? I said you all form one alliance. Get doing that. There you go, thank you, Ukraine. So you'll form one alliance, and now Europe looks pretty allianced out, I suppose. Eastern Europe could technically be one alliance, and then Western Europe's all mixed up. But yeah, that's probably going to do it for today's episode. India's actually got none at this point. The map has changed a lot. Well, not a lot, but Mesopotamia's definitely down a lot. The Turkish are probably one of the strongest countries in the world at this point. More colonial powers joining the race in southern India, Bengal, the Orange Team in China to an extent, and the Koreans as well. Yeah, well, Denmark's also taking more stuff, and look at the Pyrenees go, even though it's a random minor country. Yeah, thanks for watching today's episode. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Comment things you want to see happen in the future, like border changes and stuff, because I'll probably implement it unless I've got plans for that country. And have a nice rest of your day. Goodbye.